The town of Eldervale was not marked on most economic maps. It was small, quiet, surrounded by pine forests and farmland, the kind of place where debts were measured in livestock trades and handshake promises. But one day, something strange happened, something that made Eldervale the center of a global financial storm without a single politician noticing. At the edge of town stood the oldest bank in the region, Eldervale Trust. The building was made of brick so dark it almost absorbed sunlight, with tall arched windows that reflected distorted versions of the world. Eldervale's people had trusted this bank for over a century. It survived wars, depressions, pandemics, but it had never been questioned until the sealed envelope arrived. The envelope was delivered to 19-year-old Leora Gaines, a librarian who kept historical records for the town. It was odd because it wasn't addressed to the mayor or the bank manager. It was addressed to the curious one. Inside was a single note. Greater than $100 can become $1,000, not by work, but by law. No signature, no explanation, just the sentence, which felt more like a warning than a mathematical curiosity. Leora spent days obsessing over it. She checked every archive in Eldervale Library, but there was no direct reference to the note. However, she unearthed an ancient ledger from 1913. The same year, a powerful institution, the Federal Reserve, was formed across the ocean. The journal contained a sentence eerily similar to the note that arrived in her mailbox. She decided to investigate the bank itself. She approached Eldervale Trust as rain gently tapped the pavement, forming tiny rivers like financial flow lines. The manager, Mr. Harrow, was a man with a permanent smile that never changed shape. His suits were always too perfect for a town like Eldervale. She placed the note on his desk. He blinked for the first time since she entered. "Where did you get this?" "That's not important," she replied. "Is the statement true?" Mr. Harrow leaned back, clasping his hands. "If you're asking about the modern banking model, then yes, it's based on a system individuals don't often understand: fractional lending by deposit multiplication." "Say it in simpler words," he sighed. "All right, if a person deposits $100 into a bank, the bank is legally allowed to loan out most of it while keeping only a fraction as reserve. That means the same $100 can generate up to $1,000 in economic money through repeated lending across banks, markets, and borrowers. It's not printed, it's created." Leora stared silently. "So the rest doesn't exist?" "Oh, it exists," Harrow said with a philosophical tone. "Just not physically. It exists as numbers, promises, and interest." She felt uneasy. "Then what backs it?" He gave a calm response. "Debt backs it, interest backs it, the future backs it." "That sounds like magic." "It is magic," he admitted, smiling again, "but arithmetic magic recognized by governments, nations, and central authorities like the IMF." Leora left the bank more confused than when she arrived, but instead of deterring her, it lit a fire in her. Eldervale began to bloom inside her mind, not as a small town, but as a metaphor for the entire world economy. She started researching how money moves, spreads, multiplies, disappears, and controls societies. Her first major realization: banks don't lend money, they create it. Her second: countries don't own money, banks license it to them with interest. Her third, and darkest thought yet: a system that grows from nothing will eventually collapse from lack of something. Leora began publishing short cryptic messages on the community board in Eldervale Town Square. "Deposits are seeds. Loans are shadows. Interest is the harvest. If money grows without work, poverty grows without blame. You're not borrowing money, you're borrowing time." People laughed at first. They thought this was part of her usual poetic philosophy sessions. Eldervale loved riddles. But riddles became alarm when farmers were suddenly denied loans they had always received easily. Old Martha Weaver, a woman whose family had farmed for generations, was the first to publicly break trust. "They said I need collateral for money they don't even physically have." The entire town gathered around. Leora stood quietly among them like a prophet who didn't want to be one. Collateral, that was the trick. The town was forced to provide real assets to borrow created money. That's when the bigger storm began. International investors started buying Eldervale trusts, local loans, and reselling them into international bond systems. A market structure indirectly influenced by financial engines like the World Bank. Debt from Eldervale farmers was packaged and sold digitally into global markets. Eldervale's debt was no longer local. It was global, but no one in Eldervale had ever signed anything international. Leora realized that the system allowed: 1. A bank to hold deposit money. 2. Loan 9x more than it holds. 3. Charge interest on the created amount. 4. Trade debt like a product. 5. Buy real assets when borrowers fail. 6. Profit whether the town wins or loses. It was genius, shocking, predatory, perfect. The bank, Eldervale Trust, had quietly become the town's largest economic landlord. Not through force, through financial math. Leora returned to the archives again. She found one final ledger entry from 1930. It said, "If they ever learn the trick, they will stop valuing money and start questioning ownership." The next morning, Leora disappeared. The library door was open. Her favorite chair was empty, but there was a new note pinned to it. "You were looking for a creditor. You should have looked for an owner." People launched a search, but the mayor received a message from a mobile number that didn't trace locally. It was routed through communication systems often used by applications like Signal. It read, "Fractional banking was never the secret. Debt trading was never the crime. The real magic is convincing humans it was their money to begin with." The town panicked, but the bank remained calm, protected by laws written bigger than towns, influenced indirectly by institutions with monetary authority like the Bank of England. Eldervale Trust started foreclosing farms that defaulted on interest built over created money. Real land was exchanged for digital numbers. The paradox was complete. By the time Leora returned, months later, Eldervale was no longer quiet. It had scars of restructure, repossession, and realization. She walked into the bank again. This time, she didn't ask questions. She gave answers. Mr. Harrow looked at her like someone seeing a ghost grow into adulthood. $100 became $1,000, she said, placing a bag of soil on his desk. "But this still exists." He frowned. She continued, "You built a tree from phantom seeds. Don't be surprised when people stop feeding the roots." And then she whispered into the mic, "Your video." Voiceover line idea. The richest nations are not those who print money, but those whose debt others have to pay. Eldervale changed forever. Not because it solved the magic trick of finances, but because it stopped believing magic should control reality. Greater than fractional banking didn't steal your wealth. It diluted your belief in ownership first. Once that belief cracks, the equation flips.